We had talked about meeting in Bali for a long time, and now it was finally happening. First checking into a hotel in Kuta to meet up, then out to the beach for a couple of drinks and some food. As evening fell, we saw dusk over the gentle waves, watched Balinese flying kites and taking a dip, and admired the very strange statue on the end of the beach, Hindu, we assumed. There were 3 of us on this trip, Andrew, Elton and myself, and our plan was to do a road trip of Bali, heading first up north. The traffic was pretty crazy, with queues of scooters, cars and trucks, which were heading along the coast towards Java. I had expected the road chaos to be due to holidaymakers, but along the road we took, the traffic was pretty much all locals. We made a lunch stop in Tabanan for spicy Indonesian food, and back out onto the road. We headed north into the island, away from the busy coast road, and now the traffic was easier, and the drive became more pleasant. As we went up into the hills, we saw terraces of rice paddies Bali is known for, with paddies seemingly built into every available space. Alongside the road we saw monkeys, and when we next stopped views of farmland, with volcanoes that we had skirted around on our journey. More rice paddies with a stop to watch workers in the fields. Then the road came down to the settlements along the north shore. Heading along some back roads, we found a view over a lake or reservoir and got a good idea of how Balinese villages look in these more remote parts of the island. We finally pulled over on the north shore by a Hindu temple. The sea was beautiful and the shoreline was patrolled by monkeys. The temple was flanked by some strange demon-like sculptures and statues of tigers, but we needed somewhere to stay, so I didn't stop for long. We booked into a friendly and reasonably priced hotel on the beachfront and headed out for a dip in the sea. We stayed there for 3 nights and spent a lot of time exploring the reefs and chasing fish around underwater. Some of the reef was man-made to encourage sea life to recolonise the area, and out to sea was a platform built for the same purpose. There were thousands of fish around the platform, more than I'd ever seen anywhere else, and we shared the water with snorkelers and scuba divers enjoying the ocean sights. Along the bottom of the sea some metal structures had been sunk, and coral had recolonised them also. Deep down on the seabed we saw a turtle munching away on the seagrass. As we headed back to shore, we were surrounded by a huge shoal of small silver fish, darting very quickly across our path. It was amazing. The beach was pristine, and this must have been how South Bali was, before it got overtaken by over-tourism. The place we stayed at, as well as doing diving and having some rooms, had a facility for turtle rescue. There were many small turtles in tanks, where they were allowed to grow before being released into the ocean. It was safer for them here than on the beach, where their chances of survival were less. Fishermen would bring eggs into the centre where they would hatch and then be released.
Come on, Kate.
Tourists could pay a small fee to release a turtle themselves and support the rescue efforts in that way. There was a large turtle in the pool that was too old to be released, and also a mid-sized turtle that had been brought in that was tagged before being released back out into the sea. We took walks along the north shore, finding a deserted temple with a strange blue mythical creature in its grounds. The coast was beautiful and peaceful with jetties and boats, both large and small. One day I went off on my own with my camera along some back roads, finding a more remote stretch of beach with no one around. The mountains behind reminded me a little of Oahu's North Shore, but they weren't quite so fluted. I found a strange pond structure guarded by statues, with pond lilies in the water. There was a lot about this country I didn't understand for sure. 3 days passed quickly and we found it very relaxing with swims, beach walks and some good restaurants to eat Balinese food. Some beautiful Indonesian girls served us delicious food and I think we all fell a little in love with one of them. But eventually we had to leave, back on the road, and now heading into the interior of the island, stopping at some hot pools for a dip. Our next stop was at a hillside villa Elton had found, and as we entered down its long path, we were greeted by Balinese music. The villa was incredible with a pool and set in beautiful farmland. Behind it the hills of the interior, and not even that expensive. Each night our host lit incense offerings to the gods, and we were very happy we found this idyllic place. In the evening we explored the local villages in the car, saw some beautiful ornate houses, and hung out in the jungle, with the guys visiting a beautiful waterfall down many steps. We played games, listened to music, and the local musician even let us try out his instrument that had been playing for us. Before we left, we visited a factory where locals were making Indonesian gamelan instruments. We just turned up and the guys let us watch for a while. Then back on the road. We were now driving southeast through the Balinese hill country, passing lush jungle and roadside warungs, farmsteads and workshops. We approached Mount Batur volcano, which we could see under the clouds. As we got closer, the traffic started to build up and we came to the town of Kintamani. This was clearly on the tourist trail, and tourists and hawkers lined the viewpoints looking across the volcano and its crater lake. On the lake we could see structures that might have been fish farms, but we weren't close enough to say for sure. In this region there are many waterfalls, and we picked one at random to visit. Down many steps and walking along a riverbed barefoot, we came to the main waterfall area in a fern-covered gorge. The guys gave it a 6 out of 10 for Bali waterfall score, but I was happy to have got down there and get to such a beautiful place. Then we went back along the river, up the steps, and at the top we could hear the sound of gamelan instruments being played. The waterfall staff were putting on a show for us, and they were quite happy for Elton to join in. Then our last drive through the Balinese countryside before hitting the traffic of the south of the island. See more sights of the road before reaching our final destination on the main island of Bali, the town of Sanur. Sanur is a port with boats out to the offshore islands, but it had a surprise for us. The locals were practicing for a major festival in the town. A large gamelan band and women practicing their Indonesian dancing. We stood and watched this free exhibition of local culture and tried to understand the traditions that were playing out in front of us. In the morning the festival site was quiet in the beautiful early sunshine, ready for the day's events. Offerings were piled on tables, but we had to go, so unfortunately couldn't watch the day's festivities. We left the hotel and down at the port the weather was good, for the crossing to Lembongan Island where we were going next. A beautiful sunrise over the sea, and to the left the huge volcano of Mount Agung clearly visible. The boats were lined up ready to go, but Sanur had one last treat for us while we waited to board. A procession of locals heading down to the festival area, the women beautiful in matching costumes and offerings on their heads. the men dressed in white robes and headdresses. At the back, musicians played Indonesian instruments, which they carried with them, drums and gongs, chanting in unison. Samir had scored, but now we have to leave the main Bali island, and in the next video we travel to the island of Lombok, a beautiful offshore paradise.
Oh, mamam tak kusia, akan tak kusia, dan rasakan gimana rasanya.